Hello, Mike. Lovely to have you here. I'm very happy to have this chat with you today. Continue
It's lovely
my
to be here.
behind the scenes conversations, yes, because you are an executive recruiter. We've also worked together for a few years. And I know you have always had like a very keen interest in everything AI, from the tools to help us performing better our job, or also working with drug discovery companies are at the forefront basically of the AI innovation, right? And I wanted to have this chat with you today because I would like to get your take on basically what you've observed working with these startups over the years. But also to discuss a little bit recruitment processes because I think there is still lots of confusion and maybe concern about AI, how it can potentially becoming an additional barrier between the candidates and the hiring teams. But let me start by asking you a little bit about yourself, about your background. So, how did you enter the recruitment space, and what sectors have you covered over the years?
Yeah, it's a good question, and thank you for having me here. I think, like many other people, I've stumbled into recruitment by chance, just thinking about how can I utilize the skills that I've gained from previous careers or from other people from studies. And one thing there is with recruitment is it's uniquely a human business. We deal in relationships. Without that, we have nothing essentially. Network, relationships, constant communication on with various stakeholders. That is the job, and I love that about it. Having to get to know all people from all sorts of walks of life and make the right connections between these people. Now, since I started my career over 5 years ago now in recruitment, I've covered a few different sectors, focused primarily on the wider life science sector, whether that be large CDMOs and multinational pharma companies such as Lonza, Sanofi, and the likes of them, Janssen as well, or it's been smaller biotechs, medtech companies, health tech. I've worked across the whole sector, primary focus on Europe, UK, and a bit over in the US in the Boston area as well. It's been quite a ride, and I've had the privilege of working with a variety of different roles within these companies as well, which given me a good overview of not only a particular set of niche skills or roles within a certain company, but wider how all these different functions work together, what the challenges are at different stages of development, both of a drug or product, but also in the company, and what you need to look at moving forward when you get into that next stage.
Excellent, yeah. And you mentioned the fact that you work for different types of organizations, so large pharma, CROs, CDMOs, but also smaller biotechs and startups. Do you think there is a main difference, I would say, from hiring for smaller organizations, early stage startups compared to more established companies?
I'll definitely say so. With large organizations, they've typically been around for a long time. There's a big apparatus to go through. So they typically have a very structured interview process that has been well defined throughout years, and it's being renewed and updated constantly as well. But you'll typically start with speaking with a recruiter such as myself, and then hiring team internally, and you're very structured with the process you need to go through. It can also move a bit slow for that reasons. They typically have very clearly defined deadlines or closing dates for roles. So even if they say within 48 hours, they already have the first candidates in, and actually very good candidates might be one of these people who ends up getting the job as well. They're already predefined by internal processes that the role needs to be live for 3 weeks before they can close it off, and then they can start interviewing, and they need to go through and screen X amount of people that are relevant, and they need to take them all through. It takes time. And also, the hiring managers here typically have very, very full diaries because there's so much bureaucracy. So the interview process can take quite a while. Now, I'm speaking generally here, of course. It doesn't go for every large company, but it tends to be the pattern for majority of roles with majority of large organizations. Whereas with the startups and smaller businesses, they may not have the same structure, at least not set in stone in the same way. They haven't written policies or processes that are part of the company blueprint. They can be a lot more agile and flexible to say, well, actually within 48 hours, we have found X amount of good candidates. We want to take them through to an interview straight away before they're no longer available or before we lose their interest, essentially. And sometimes you see interview processes change a bit as well with smaller companies when you go through the process and realize, oh, we actually need to explore this, or we don't need that second stage because we covered all of those things in the first stage as well. So like we'd see with many things, startup versus larger company, things just seem to be a lot more agile in small organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. From my observation point, also the job brief can change during the process. So maybe certain skills that weren't so critical at the start of the project may become so very, very important.
That's another very good point you raised. You might see throughout an interview process in smaller companies that they find out throughout the interview process, wow, that skill set, we hadn't even thought of that. That is all of a sudden very important, and we want to add that, or actually say, unfortunately, the people we interviewed, they were very good for what we thought we needed, but we not explored with them, and we now need something completely different. I've seen that happen on multiple occasions, either to the positive or the negative. It goes both ways. Whereas in large organizations, you're part of one of several thousand people. There's typically a very defined role for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit about your activities as a recruiter? Let's start how do you approach a new search? How do you scout for candidates? Do you do more headhunting or job posting?
It's a good question. So obviously the first part is communicating with the company that we're recruiting for. It's important for me not only to understand what is the role about and what is the job description, in a certain sense, what's the brief for this role, but to understand from that, what impact will this person have on the company or on a certain project, whatever the scope of the role, of course, is, and what would you like this person to deliver. Then also understand a bit about the culture in the company, especially when it's smaller companies. The culture in the company is very important. How do you like to work as a team? Is the lab work done internally? Is it done externally? Is it a mixture of the two? How do you make these decisions? What are the plans going forward as well? There's a lot of things here that has an impact on the kind of person who would thrive in the company. But once all that is settled, I've had these in-depth conversations with the hiring team and the wider organization. Well, then we try and then we go out to the market, of course. Predominantly very direct headhunting. Obviously, first place I would go is to my network. I have an extensive network, so I'll always look there first. Who have I spoken with recently? Who have I spoken with in the past as well, who might be right for this role now? Search through my database that's proprietary to where I work, and then find these individuals. Then we also go through some job posting. It's always good to see. I don't know everyone in the market. I know a great deal of people, and I like to think a lot of great people, but I don't know every single person. So by job posting, I might just reach that extra person who's actually phenomenal in this space as well. But otherwise, there's a lot of online tools that we use to go through direct headhunting and try and find the right people, whether that be through LinkedIn, which is a great tool in many sectors, whether it's through specific forums for certain job roles or types, or industries for that matter. In the life science space as well, we can look towards publications within a certain sector. If it's a very niche kind of research area and we need a research expert in this area who will publish in this area, we can reach out to. So there's various tools, but I'll say 80%, 90% even is direct headhunting of our own networks and external networks, and then only 10% would be job postings.
Absolutely. If, for example, you have candidates that are new to the job market, job searching, and you book a call with them, so an initial screening call, let's say, how do you think they should prepare for that conversation? Do you have any tips for these early career scientists?
Yeah, I find it quite interesting with early careers, and I love having conversations with early careers, whether that's out of a bachelor, out of a PhD, a postdoc, or wherever you are in your career, getting from academia into industry, because it's my opportunity to give a lot of advice as well, but it's also my opportunity to see what's actually changing in the educational system, and what is the importance there right now, and how can we help translate that into what's important in the industry. I think the importance when you're going from into the industry straight out from your university degree, is to focus on the broader picture of what you've been doing. You can very easily get too deep in with what have you done specifically over the last 4 years, especially if it's been a PhD or postdoc, where sometimes it can be incredibly narrow. You can get incredibly wide as well, but it can be incredibly narrow, and get to talk too much about how the liver of a mouse functions. Not typically very relevant for many industry roles. I would rather try and know, okay, well, you studied the liver of the mouse, and what impact that had on the wider system. What was the purpose of this? What were you trying to figure out? What was the big question you had that led down to this? And what were all the steps you had to go through? I want to understand the thinking process behind. And that's also what is important to industry then. You develop so many skills when you're taking education, whether that be, again, bachelor, master's, PhD, or postdoc. I want to hear about the wider skill set here and how that all connects, how you got to the point of figuring out, well, I need to learn about mass spectrometry now. Why? Why did you figure that out? What was the impact it had? Did you think about other applications for this? Did you think about other ways to study the same?
Yeah.
That's the importance in my opinion.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I'm thinking about a concern that I've seen a lot posting around on LinkedIn, for example, but I've seen lots of people talking about AI applied to, of course, recruitment processes. So, for example, for screening candidate CVs. So the concern is, of course, that real people are not actually reading the CVs, but they're just basically blocked by the software. Do you think it's something that happens in your niche, within your sector? Because from my point of view, I think at least in early stage startups and biotechs, CV are actually read by recruiters and hiring managers. People do actually take the time to sift through the details and see if there is an interesting candidate on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I'll be cautious with being too scared of the impact AI is having right now. AI is good, and I use AI tools, and I'm sure there'll be an AI tool that could perhaps look at the recording here and give a transcription as well at the end of this call. Yeah. It's very, very useful having AI tools, but the whole thought of having AI to help with recruiters or talent acquisition, hiring managers to screen through CVs is nothing new. We've had automation tools that have been doing that for years. There's always been some sort of parameter. Do you have X experience? Have you been in the job market for X amount of years? There's always been these screening questions. Well, not always, but at least for many years, have there been these screening questions and ways that if you have a large volume of CVs, you can quickly apply that in an automation tool, and it will filter out those that haven't mentioned it specifically. The same goes when we go through specific headhunting. We also search for certain keywords, and if that is not mentioned, well, you won't appear on the search as a candidate, because, well, you probably don't have that experience then, unless you have a very lackluster CV. So it's not something I would worry too much about right now as a candidate. Is it used? Sure, to some degree, because it's a smarter way of using automation and do it perhaps faster, do it more agile even, and actually capture more people. There's so many ways. If we take mass spectrometry again, there's so many different ways you can write mass spectrometry. There's so many different ways you can describe it without mentioning mass spectrometry. As a human, that can be very difficult to think of as a recruiter, or have I thought of all the different ways of doing it. As an AI, that can be trained to figure out how do I search for that without mass spectrometry specifically being filtered, and it might actually help capture more candidates rather than filter them away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it could be very useful, and it is very useful when you got large volume of applicants, for example, you were thinking of larger organizations. Maybe if you're headhunting, as you were saying, for specific profiles, you would use it probably to screen through your database, I would say, candidates. Probably not if you're looking directly on LinkedIn, although LinkedIn does include some AI features nowadays. So it's all part of the system, right?
Definitely. As a candidate, it's not something I'll be scared of right now that it's going to make the process worse. It's, if anything, it's going to help make it better.
That's reassuring, thanks. And thinking about, again, academic researchers are thinking about moving into a new sector, in this case, the biotech startup sector. How do you think hiring managers typically view candidates that are about to make this transition, so directly from academia?
I think when we look, especially in the life science sector, there is one concern I've heard on multiple occasions when coming directly from academia into the industry. And it relates to tracking of processes, tracking of research, and note keeping that follows regulations that you need to follow when you are in industry research. That can be a lot more lax when you're doing academic research. You need to have a lot higher reproducibility within the industry, whereas in academia you can go through it and can you test it again and prove it again? Yeah, sure, we'll try, and we'll do it. And certainly if you want to have a very, very good paper, you need to make sure it's there, but you can be a lot more lax throughout. At least that's the view of industry. You can't do that when you're in industry. You need to be very, very rigorous with keeping track of how the research is progressing, what experiments are you conducting, what was the temperature, what were all the different impacts here, so you can go back again.
Yeah, I would say that most of the times all those boxes are ticked in academia as well. The thing is that it's difficult to prove that you actually were so rigorous in your process. Because maybe
exactly, it's difficult of proving it.
Yeah, exactly. How can you tell? Of course, it's your word against anybody else, but you are not following strictly GLP practices because you're not, accredited as a lab. You are an academic lab, so maybe you are doing all the activities in the way that should be done, but you cannot really prove it, and maybe that's it. The hiring manager may have, will they be able to keep up with how we do research, basically?
That has been one thing I've heard on multiple occasions. And then another is volume, in particular when you're in academia, you have limited resources. That's the reality of it. Yes, you have limited resources in industry as well, but those limited resources all of a sudden greater still. So can you keep up with the volume that you need to go through when you're all of a sudden doing the same research at a much larger stage? And can you keep up with the pace? Because all of a sudden you need to really deliver value, commercial value as well. There's always that big difference. Have you delivered research value? Have you gone out, asked a question, got some results to it? Yes, fantastic. Okay, what can we use that research to? Can we actually produce something that is of value from that research? And how do you then start saying, no, that's not a question I'm gonna keep on following because it's not going to give me that commercial value? That is another big point of or big difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. In academia, you are basically, you keep going because there is always something, if you push it, there is always knowledge to explore more in the sector. Whether in industry, you need to have in mind at the beginning of the project what's the goal, what do you want to get out of the research activity, and you need to be able to stop if you reach it, or if you see that there is no a purpose to go further.
When you get to the point of saying that, could we continue studying this? Sure, we can always keep on studying, because even when we think there's an end, there's another question hiding behind it. But finding the end where you say it's not worth the resource anymore, there's other areas where we're going to get more commercial value. Did we answer the question? No, but it's too difficult answering the question right now. We don't have the resource for it. Instead, we found another branch here that actually provided more value for us. We're going to put our researchers over there.
Absolutely agree. I want to ask you a few questions about AI technology, like in drug discovery, drug development. So the companies that you work with that were focusing on AI, because I think first of all, it's an extremely exciting space. We see AI and machine learning be applied to almost every aspect of drug development, from early discovery to clinical trials and beyond. And biology is really becoming multidisciplinary, so you're not just adding AI, but you're integrating into the strategy, right? From your point of view, point of observation, what kinds of AI machine learning roles are startups in drug discovery hiring for right now?
It's a good question. There's a bit of a mixture, as far as I see it, between those who can create complex models, very, very good and strong models as well, that can actually ingest the data and with some prompts and some questions, try and decipher what are the patterns in all this data. And there's constant development on how to create these machine learning models. But I think actually goes one step earlier than that as well. How do we collect this data? And I think that historically that has been one of the biggest problems within life sciences in utilizing this technology of machine learning and AI, is having good data in one single format or a few simple formats that the algorithms can actually use. So that has been the first problem. How can we create good, reliable data that a computer can understand? And then then the question is, from that point, can we create the models? Yes, there are brilliant physicists, there's brilliant scientists, there's brilliant mathematicians who can create fantastic models based on this data, and then deploy that to drug discovery. But I actually see AI outside of drug discovery having a bigger impact on businesses in other ways, instead of looking at just drug discovery, which is great because it really does help speed up. We have great examples, of course, Benevolent, Recursion, Orbis Medicines, Exscientia, before they became part of Recursion. There's great examples of companies out here that are using AI in drug discovery. But wider speaking, there's a lot of research going into how can we actually use AI to manufacture these drugs better, to make sure we have less waste or higher purity, or perhaps we can speed it up. How can we go from a active pharmaceutical ingredient to a drug product quicker, more efficiently as well, and then manufacture that. There's a lot of research into how can we use AI in a corporate setting with quality assurance and quality control. How can we use AI in regulatory field as well, in medical writing, medical reviews, and all of this, which again, that text-based AI is also very useful when we look at drug discovery as well. And those are the more practical use cases of AI within life sciences right now that are getting out on a wider scale. Then there's those two branches, and when it comes to drug discovery specifically, this starts with good data. That's the crucial point. And from there, you then have not only AI, you have bioinformaticians and biochemistry, not bioinformatician and cheminformaticians. That is a field that's growing as well because they help create this better data and they help model it as well. And with the models they can create, that can then go into machine learning models as well.
Absolutely. I've seen companies that, like typically in a classic biotech startup, you would have like the founding teams where it's composed mostly by scientists. Maybe you got a business commercial lead, but now you can see also computational scientists, AI engineers, as co-founders as well. So it's the correct strategy at its core, where AI becomes critical, basically. Have you noticed any difference in the culture of these AI-driven companies compared with, I don't know, traditional drug discovery startups?
I don't know if there's something hugely different in the culture and in the research. I would say perhaps a bit more explorative when it comes to different technologies. Not limiting that. I'll be very careful with how I phrase this because I don't want it to sound like I'm thinking negatively of companies who don't embrace it, because I don't. It's different points of view. But I think they're just they're exploring a lot more. How can we use technology? How can we take this lab equipment that has been in existence for perhaps decades, and how can we think of it differently so we can utilize it how we want to? How can we perhaps work with the company who makes this instrument to make it even smarter or better for our purpose? So they're certainly looking a lot more at what will technology allow, rather than saying we have this technology, what science can we do with it? A different mindset with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, companies like this would need both the biologists, like wet lab scientists, but also, of course,
absolutely,
side of things. But have you seen more biologists maybe retraining in data, in machine learning, or more data scientists learning biology? Which direction feels more successful?
That's a good question. And I actually think it's more biologists and wet lab scientists who throughout, whether that be at a bachelor, master's, or PhD, or perhaps afterwards, find out that they have a knack for technology, for coding, or for building these models, and then retrain into that at some point throughout this journey. Then I see the other way. I can't recall many scenarios where I've seen someone who's from the word go said, no, I'm going to be training within bioinformatics and AI and life sciences, and then say, actually, I want to be in the lab. I have seen a few examples of people who've trained completely outside of life sciences, where they've perhaps been a mathematician or a physicist studying something completely different, and then applied that mathematical and programming, machine learning knowledge they gain, data science knowledge they gain through this, and applied that into the life science sector, and then actually retraining a bit on biology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen the same, I would say. Very, very last question. If you could give a piece of advice to someone applying for the first time in the biotech startup sector, what would it be?
Ask for advice. Ask for advice from a recruiter that you trust, from yourself, from a mentor, perhaps from someone you admire and ask them, what was the important step you took to go from academia to industry, and what is the advice you would give today? Because it will change. If I give you an answer now, in a year it might be different. But then also say, get out there, market yourself. It's if you're not on LinkedIn or any job boards with your CV, you're going to be seen by so many fewer people like myself who are actively out trying to find you. So you'll limit the opportunities presented to you. And with that piece of marketing, have a great CV written. Get your CV out to some recruiters, get your CV out to yourself, to get some advice on how can you make that better, how can you help stand out. I think that's very important.
Absolutely, I agree. And well, thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure to have a chat with you today, and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Cecilia.